I should have known something was wrong the moment I rang the doorbell. Usually, my son Ethan would greet me with a warm hug and that same smile he had when he was 8, missing his 2 front teeth and insisting I was the strongest woman in the world. But tonight, it was Kelsey who opened the door, her expression tight and polite, in that way people use when they don't really mean it. Her designer dress barely moved as she shifted to block the doorway, and her tone carried no warmth. "Oh, you're here." I held up the gift bag with both hands, trying to keep my voice steady. "I brought something for Liam, for his birthday." Kelsey looked me over, my second-hand coat, the cardigan I'd knitted myself, and the small bag in my hand. The silence stretched. Then she stepped aside, but only just enough for me to slip through. "Ethan's still getting dressed. Everyone else is already here." Everyone else? I hadn't realized there would be other guests. Ethan had called the week before and said casually, as always, that they were doing something small for Liam's 6th birthday. Just close family. I'd spent the week knitting a new hoodie in Liam's favorite color, forest green, and baked a small batch of his favorite cookies, oatmeal with chocolate chips. When I stepped into the living room, my breath caught. The place had been transformed. A private chef in a rented coat stood behind a marble-topped buffet. Crystal glasses shimmered on every surface. Guests I didn't recognize floated from room to room in sleek cocktail dresses and tailored suits. The whole evening reeked of money. Money I never had, not when I was raising Ethan by myself on 2 waitress jobs and night shifts at a bottling plant. "Grandma!" Liam's voice cut through the low hum of laughter, like sunlight breaking through clouds. He ran toward me with arms wide, his tiny bow tie crooked, and his cheeks already stained with cake. I dropped everything and scooped him up. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I whispered against his hair. "I brought something just for you. You're going to love it." But before I could even open the gift bag, Kelsey's hand appeared on Liam's shoulder. Her smile had vanished. "Liam, what did we talk about?" "Grandma needs to wash her hands first. Go play with your cousins." She didn't look at me, just turned Liam gently but firmly away, as if I were some unclean stranger who'd wandered in by mistake. Dinner was worse. I was placed at the far end of the table, tucked between an empty seat and a finance consultant who spoke about hedge funds like it was a sport. Ethan sat near the center, beside Kelsey, silent but present. Our eyes met once. He smiled faintly, but when Kelsey leaned in to whisper something in his ear, he looked away. Something inside me dimmed. Then came Kelsey's voice, clear and cold. "So Melanie, Ethan tells me you're still working that little cleaning business. That's sweet." And just like that, the entire room went quiet. And I knew I was there only to be tolerated, not welcomed, not family. I left the house without dessert, without a thank you, without even a glance from my son. The front door shut behind me, with the kind of finality you only hear when something important has ended. I stood on their polished front steps for a long moment, holding the now slightly crumpled gift bag in my hand. Inside was the forest green hoodie I'd knitted for Liam, still folded neatly, untouched. The sky above was cold and silent. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold. By the time I made it back to my apartment on the south side of Chicago, the anger had replaced the hurt. I slipped out of my coat, kicked off my shoes, and walked straight to the back room, the one Ethan had never asked about, the one I kept locked. I opened the small safe in the corner and pulled out the thick leather folder. Inside were the founding documents of Orion Nexus Logistics. 30 years ago, I'd taken the $72,000 in life insurance money left behind when Ethan's father died suddenly. Everyone told me to be cautious, to live frugally, to stretch it as far as possible. But I didn't want to survive. I wanted to build. I enrolled in night classes, learned supply chain systems, and spent years cleaning warehouses while studying logistics in every spare moment. I invested in a crumbling little startup with a clunky name and an even clunkier business model. Then I took over when it collapsed and rebuilt it from the ground up. Now, Orion Nexus had over 1,700 employees across 3 states and managed logistics for some of the largest retailers in the country. And I owned 8 to 7% of it. No one, not even Ethan, knew, not because I was hiding, but because no one ever asked. I set the folder down and sat at my desk, opening my laptop. My fingers typed before I'd fully thought it through. Kelsey Hill, Orion Nexus, employee file. Her headshot popped up immediately. Strategic Partnerships Division. Hired 2 years ago. Fast-tracked for promotion due to dynamic leadership qualities and visionary client strategies. I clicked through to her internal feedback forms. A few red flags, but nothing major. One formal complaint had been dismissed. Words like abrasive, condescending, and dismissive of veteran employees stood out. My chest tightened. Of course, I minimized the file and sat back. She thought I was maintenance, that I was an inconvenience, an embarrassment. But what she didn't know was that I signed the checks, I designed the departments, I handpicked the senior team. She was climbing a ladder that I built with my own hands, and now she was spitting on the people who held it steady beneath her. The next morning, I would walk into that glass building with my name on the legal documents and make sure she understood something very simple. You can only look down on others if you're sure they'll never look back up. Tomorrow, Kelsey Hill would find out just how far down she could fall. I arrived at Orion Nexus at 6:30 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual. The building gleamed like a mirror in the early morning light, its sharp edges cutting through the Chicago skyline. I'd walked through these revolving glass doors for over 2 decades, first as a nobody in an oversized blazer, then as the woman who owned everything those mirrored panels reflected. Still, I never once forgot where I came from, and I never let anyone else forget who helped me get here. Except, apparently, the people like Kelsey, the receptionist. A young man named Drew looked startled to see me. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter. You're in early." I smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep." He buzzed me through without hesitation. On the executive floor, I walked the silent halls until I reached my office. Northeast corner, floor-to-ceiling windows, hand-carved mahogany desk. Not a single photograph of Ethan. Just Liam's drawing of a dragon on a post-it note in the corner. I sat down and pulled up the employee dashboard. Hill, Kelsey, Division, Strategic Partnerships, reports to Alan Cross. I opened her file again. She'd impressed her department manager with her confidence and modern tone. But 3 complaints had been filed against her by employees over 50. I read every word. One from Yvonne Harris, 59, who'd worked at Orion for over a decade. Kelsey had publicly corrected her in a team meeting, saying her experience was outdated and that she should stick to what she knew, paper and fax machines. One from Harold Lynn, 62, who Kelsey had removed from a client pitch without notice, later telling another coworker that dinosaurs don't belong in PowerPoint presentations. And one that turned my stomach, Veronica Dale, a 56-year-old in administrative support, claimed Kelsey had called her just the help and implied she'd been hired to make coffee, not contribute ideas. None of these made it past the first review. Her manager, Alan, had dismissed them as misunderstandings. I made a note to meet with Alan soon. But Kelsey, her pattern was clear. She didn't just target older employees. She enjoyed making them feel small. I leaned back, my heart pounding not from emotion, but from decision. I reached for the phone and buzzed my assistant. "Diana, I need you to pull the organizational chart for strategic partnerships. And then get me human resources. Tell them I want an immediate departmental reassignment processed this morning." Diana hesitated for only a second. Name? Kelsey Hill. Effective immediately. Transfer her to Building C Facilities Operations. Facilities? She asked carefully. "Yes," I said, my voice calm but hard. "Custodial support, janitorial rotation, lunchroom sanitation if needed." There was silence on the line. Do you want me to inform her supervisor? No. Let her find out the same way everyone else in that division will. When she shows up to swipe into the executive suite and her keycard turns red. And if she refuses? Diana asked. I allowed myself a slow, cold smile. Then she can explore other opportunities, preferably far away from here. I hung up and turned toward the windows, watching the city awaken below. Kelsey wanted to climb. Let's see how well she does, starting from the basement. The following morning, while most employees were still sipping their lattes and logging in for another day of corporate strategy, Kelsey Hill stood in the fluorescent-lit corridor of Building C, staring at a maintenance locker with her name taped to it in blocky black letters. This has to be a mistake, she said out loud. Then again, louder, as if someone might overhear and come to rescue her. No one came. Inside the locker was a gray janitorial uniform, gloves, a cap, and a small printed schedule. Her duties for the day: mop the lobby, clean the glass partitions in Conference Wing B, and scrub the executive break room kitchenette. She stood frozen, manicured nails clenched tight, before finally pulling the uniform on over her designer blouse. The pants sagged, the sleeves scratched, her name badge, previously gleaming and framed in gold, was now a flimsy sticker. And across the hall, unnoticed, I watched. I'd borrowed a facilities staff uniform, loose-fitting, standard issue, clean but worn. My silver hair was hidden under a faded ball cap. No one gave me a second glance. That was the beauty of invisibility. When people think you're no one, they show you who they really are. Kelsey's first assignment was the executive lobby, a space she used to strut through with her heels clicking and her phone glued to her ear. Now she pushed a mop cart across the polished floor, her eyes darting from every reflection like she might catch herself slipping into shame. It didn't take long for the complaining to begin. I don't belong here, she muttered to a nearby custodian. Andre, a patient man in his 50s with tired eyes and a kind voice. I'm not made for this kind of work. Andre glanced up from replacing a trash bag. Work is work. You show up, you do your job. That's how we all eat. Kelsey rolled her eyes and kept mopping. Later, I found her in the break room, scrubbing dried coffee from the counter with exaggerated disgust. This is ridiculous, she hissed to no one, then louder, to Andre again. I have a master's degree in brand analytics. I was managing a 6-figure portfolio. Now they have me wiping down microwaves. Andre didn't reply. But another voice did. Veronica Dale, the same admin Kelsey had once mocked as just the help. Maybe wiping something down is good for your soul, Veronica said, calmly walking past with a box of folders in her arms. Kelsey looked like she'd been slapped, but she didn't stop. She just waited until Veronica left and then turned to Andre. She's probably been in this building her whole life. No ambition, no clue. My chest tightened. Still no humility, still no gratitude. She thought she was being punished, but she didn't see the chance she'd been given. A chance to grow, to reflect, to transform. Instead, she sneered at every person who reminded her of what she feared most, a life without privilege. Later that day, I returned to my office. Diana looked up from her computer. How was the walkthrough? Revealing, I said quietly. She learning anything? I stared out the window. Not yet, but I am. Friday morning, 10 o'clock sharp. Diana's voice crackled softly through the intercom. She's here. Just stepped off the executive elevator. So I didn't turn around. Instead, I stared out the window, watching the river carve its quiet path through downtown Chicago. A fog was lifting. Fitting. Send her in. Behind me, the heavy double doors creaked open. I heard the sharp click of heels on marble, slower than usual, uncertain. Excuse me, Kelsey said, her voice clipped and defensive. I was told someone wanted to speak with me about my transfer. I didn't respond. I waited. She took another step inside. I don't know why I'm up here. There must be some kind of mistake. Then I slowly swiveled my chair around. The moment her eyes met mine, The color drained from her face. She froze. Melanie, her voice cracked on my name. What? How did you? I walked in, I said simply, folding my hands on the desk. Just like I've done every morning for the past 25 years. She blinked rapidly, staring around the room, as if trying to make the walls align with reality. This is your office? No, I said calmly. This is my company. She swayed slightly where she stood. You're the CEO of Orion Nexus. I'm the founder, the majority shareholder, the name on the founding charter. The woman who signs your paychecks. She dropped into the leather chair across from me, as if her knees had buckled. This is some kind of joke. I tilted my head. Is it? Kelsey's lips parted, then closed again. Her carefully curated confidence had vanished. But, at dinner, you said you owned a business, a cleaning company. I said I owned a business, I corrected. You assumed the rest. Silence filled the room. You lied to me, she finally whispered. No, I replied, leaning forward. I let you see what you were willing to see. She tried to regroup. I saw the flicker of charm return. Polished, manipulative. Mrs. Carter, I had no idea. If I had known who you were, I never would have. That's exactly the problem. Her mouth snapped shut. You didn't treat me poorly because I had done something wrong. I continued. Voice quiet but sharp. You treated me that way because you thought I had nothing. You thought I was small. And you've done the same to others. I turned my screen toward her. On it were the 3 formal complaints filed by Yvonne, Harold, and Veronica. I read every word I said, and then I listened to you call janitors leftovers and support staff dead wood. I watched you mock the very people who kept this company running while you used their labor to rise higher. Kelsey's voice flushed. I didn't mean, but you said it, and now you're here. Because consequences, Kelsey, don't care about intent. They follow behavior. She sat stiffly, defiance flickering behind her panic. What happens now? She asked. I stood and walked slowly to the window. You have 2 choices. She held her breath. 1, you resign today. I'll issue a neutral reference. Nothing glowing, nothing damning. And 2, you return to Building C, uniform on, gloves on, every shift, until you learn that power without decency is nothing but noise. Her eyes burned. This is personal. No, I said, turning back to her. This is leadership. The phone rang that evening while I was rinsing out Liam's lunchbox. Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. He called again 15 minutes later. Then again. On the 4th ring, I answered. Mom, he said, voice tight, like a man holding himself together with string. We need to talk. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and leaned against the counter. I figured this call was coming. Kelsey told me everything, he said. About the company, about what you've been doing to her. I closed my eyes. Has she told you what she did to me? She told me you humiliated her, that you had her scrubbing toilets because of a misunderstanding at Liam's party. A misunderstanding. She called security on me, Ethan. In front of 20 people, she told me I wasn't welcome at your son's birthday. She was stressed, he snapped. You know how she gets when she's planning things. It wasn't personal. It was targeted, I said flatly, and deliberate, and it wasn't the first time. He went silent. I walked to the window, looking out over the quiet street below. Autumn leaves had begun to scatter the sidewalk in gold and red, the same colors I used to rake, while Ethan played with a plastic sword in the yard. She told me you demoted her to a cleaning job, he said finally. Mom, that's extreme. I gave her a chance to learn humility. By punishing her? No. By surrounding her with the people she's spent years stepping on. He paused. She said you were spying on her. I almost laughed. Observing. That's what real leadership looks like. I listened, I documented, and I confirmed a pattern of behavior that should have cost her the job a long time ago. Why didn't you just fire her? Because I hoped she'd learn. But Ethan, she hasn't. He sighed so deeply I could hear it carry through the phone. She's not a bad person, he said quietly. She comes from a different world. No, I replied. She lives in a world she made, one where kindness is weakness and wealth is worth. There was a pause. I could almost hear the guilt creeping into his breath. You've always kept things from me, he said. I didn't even know you owned the company she worked for. You never asked. I shouldn't have had to. I clenched my jaw, forcing my voice to stay even. I raised you alone, Ethan? I scrubbed floors and packed boxes and worked graveyard shifts while you slept in the back seat of my car after school. And when I finally built something of my own, I didn't talk about it because I didn't want to make you feel like you owed me anything. I didn't mean to shout, he whispered. I know. Silence settled between us like fog. I need to see you, he said, in person. I hesitated. I'll be there at 8, he added. Kelsey wants to come too. Of course she does. Fine, I said softly, but this time you'll listen. Because what I was about to tell him would change everything. They arrived 15 minutes late. Kelsey walked in first, wearing a cream blouse and high-waisted slacks, her hair perfectly pinned, makeup flawless. It was the same outfit she wore when she wanted to be perceived as professional and misunderstood. A deliberate performance. Ethan followed behind her, looking older than I'd ever seen him. He didn't meet my eyes. I poured 3 cups of coffee and placed them on the small table by the window, where the light hit the curtains just right. The same table where I once helped Ethan with math homework and served birthday cupcakes with too much frosting. We all sat. For a moment, no one spoke. Kelsey broke the silence. I want to clear the air, she began, her voice soft but rehearsed. This situation has clearly gotten out of control, and I think we can all agree that mistakes were made. Let's stop there, I said gently but firmly. Define mistakes, she blinked. Excuse me? You said mistakes were made. Tell me which ones. She shifted in her seat. The tone I used at Liam's party. I admit it was inappropriate. I was under a lot of pressure, and I might have said things I didn't mean, like calling me maintenance and demanding I be removed from the dinner table. Kelsey glanced at Ethan for support. He said nothing. I didn't know who you were, she said tightly. If I had known you were the CEO, and that's the core of the problem, I interrupted. You wouldn't have treated me better because I deserved it. You would have treated me better because I had power. Ethan stirred in his chair. Mom, we're not here to fight. No, I said, meeting his eyes. We're here so you can finally see the truth. I turned to Kelsey. Do you deny mocking older employees at work? Calling them dinosaurs, useless, unfit? Her eyes hardened. Those comments were taken out of context. I heard them myself, I said quietly. You didn't know I was standing 3 feet behind you in the dish room. Ethan looked up. You were there? I watched her dismiss a janitor as unambitious, ridicule a woman's accent, and laugh about how the elderly were just slowing everyone down. Kelsey's hands curled into fists. You spied on me. I observed an employee with multiple HR complaints, one's conveniently buried by your supervisor. Ethan leaned back, his face pale. You said you were being targeted, he said to Kelsey. That someone at work hated you, that you were the victim. I was, she snapped. I was forced to work with unskilled people. They're the backbone of our company, I said sharply. They kept Orion Nexus alive while you were climbing ladders you didn't build. Kelsey stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. She's twisting everything. She's turning you against me, Ethan. Ethan didn't look at her. He stared down at his untouched coffee. You made my mother leave my son's birthday party, he whispered. You called her an embarrassment, and you're not sorry. You're just angry you got caught. Kelsey's voice cracked. You're taking her side? I'm taking the side of the truth. The room went still. Get out, Kelsey, he said quietly. Pack your things. We're done. She gaped at him, waiting for him to take it back. He didn't. She turned to me, eyes wild. You destroyed my marriage. No, I said, rising to meet her glare. You did that all by yourself. 6 months passed. The leaves that had painted the sidewalks in red and gold had long since fallen, replaced by soft snow and the hush of winter. Inside my apartment, a small space warmed by old books and newer memories, I was sipping tea when my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Lunch today. Liam's been practicing something for you. I smiled and typed back. I'll bring the cookies. A lot had changed since that night. Ethan moved out 2 weeks after Kelsey left. The divorce was quiet but final. She'd returned to her parents' place in Colorado, leaving behind only an unsigned resignation letters and a cloud of avoidance. No apology, no accountability, just silence. But Ethan came back, not to my couch, but to himself. Oh, he apologized again and again, and not just with words. He showed up. He listened. He peeled back the layers of denial he'd been hiding behind for years. We took it slowly, measured like rebuilding a house that had burned down but still had strong foundation. At Orion Nexus, I stepped down as CEO and appointed Diana as my successor. Smart, steady, and above all, kind. I remained chairwoman of the board, of course. I wasn't ready to disappear completely. The real work, though, had just begun. We implemented new systems, anonymous reporting, direct complaint escalation to the executive level. Sensitivity training became mandatory, not suggested. And most importantly, we changed how we promoted leadership. Compassion became as important as performance. Employees like Veronica Dale were now mentors in our cross-generational development program. Harold Lynn was leading the company-wide logistics revamp. Yvonne Harris was promoted to department lead and finally had her name on the door. I funded a scholarship for employees' children. First recipient? Andre's daughter, studying mechanical engineering at the University of Illinois. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. That afternoon, I met Ethan and Liam in the park near their new apartment. Snow blanketed the grass, and Liam had built a small snowman, complete with button eyes and a crooked carrot nose. "Grandma," he shouted, racing toward me with his arms open. I bent down and scooped him up, heart full. He pulled something from his coat pocket, a wrinkled drawing. "It's a castle," he said proudly. "And that's you, the queen." I blinked back tears. Ethan smiled, hands in his coat pockets, watching us. "He tells his friends, you're the most powerful person in the world," he said. I looked at Liam's drawing again. The stick figure queen had a cape, a crown, and a glowing heart. "I'm not powerful because I'm a CEO," I said quietly. "I'm powerful because I never stopped fighting for what mattered." That night back at home, I lit the small lamp in the corner of the kitchen. Not because I feared the dark, but because Liam always worried dragons might be afraid of it. And in that soft golden light, I finally felt at peace. Real power doesn't come from control. It comes from courage, character, and the quiet strength to choose dignity over ego, to lift others up, to stand your ground with grace. I didn't destroy Kelsey. She did that herself. But I did something more powerful. I protected the people she thought were invisible, and reclaimed the place she tried to erase me from. The legacy I leave behind won't be written in headlines. It'll be whispered in bedtime stories, painted in snow castles, and carried in the quiet, steady steps of the next woman who refuses to be told she doesn't belong. The kind of legacy that lasts.